want to talk about something that shakes us to our core, something we wrestle with in the quiet of our hearts. Are we on the right path? Are we where we're meant to be? If you've ever found yourself asking that question, you're not alone. We all long for clarity, for a sign, for something that says, yes, keep going. You're exactly where you need to be. Now, I'm not here to give you a 10-step guide to certainty because, let's be honest, life doesn't work that way. But I am here to tell you that there are signs. There are moments, whispers, and nudges that tell us we're aligned with something greater than ourselves. And if we can get quiet enough to listen, if we can be brave enough to trust, we'll recognize them. One of the most profound signs that God is leading you on the right path is this: you feel peace even when things aren't perfect. That may sound counterintuitive, right? We're conditioned to believe that peace comes when everything falls into place, when the to-do list is checked off, when life is neatly wrapped in a bow. But divine peace isn't about external circumstances. It's about an internal knowing. It's the kind of peace that settles deep in your bones, the kind that doesn't disappear when chaos knocks at your door. If you've ever felt that inexplicable calm in the middle of uncertainty, that's not luck, and it's certainly not denial. That's God whispering, keep going, I'm with you. Now, let's be clear. Peace does not mean comfort. That's where a lot of people get tripped up. We assume that if we're on the right path, it will be smooth, easy, obstacle-free. But that's not how growth works. That's not how faith works. The presence of peace doesn't mean the absence of struggle. It means that even in the struggle, you're anchored. It's the kind of peace that lets you sleep at night, even when the future is uncertain. It's the kind of peace that reminds you to take a breath, even when you don't have all the answers. If you're chasing perfection, waiting for everything to line up before you move forward, you're going to be waiting a long time. But if you're walking in faith, you'll notice that peace shows up before the breakthrough, not after. Think about the moments in your life when you felt deeply aligned with something bigger than yourself. Were they the moments when everything was perfect? Or were they the moments when you took a step forward, even when things weren't? Perfection is a mirage. It keeps us stuck, spinning, believing that if we can just get things right, then we'll feel at peace. But real peace, it shows up when we trust. It's found in the deep exhale, in the surrender, in the decision to move forward despite the imperfections. It's in the prayer whispered at 2 a.m., not knowing what comes next, but knowing you're held. This kind of peace is different from the world's definition. The world says, get everything in order and then you'll feel okay. But God's peace flips that script entirely. His peace says, feel okay even when everything isn't in order. That's the difference between worldly security and divine security. When God leads you, He doesn't promise perfection. He doesn't promise that you won't experience fear, doubt, or uncertainty. But He does promise that when you're walking in His direction, you'll have a foundation that isn't easily shaken. And let's be honest, perfection is exhausting. It's a game we can't win. It makes us question, second guess, and constantly wonder if we're enough. But peace is freeing. Peace reminds us that we're already enough, that we don't have to earn our way into alignment. If you've been striving, pushing, forcing things to happen and wondering why it feels so heavy, maybe the real question isn't, am I doing enough? Maybe the real question is, am I trusting enough? When you're on the right path, you might not always feel certain, but you will feel grounded. You will have moments when your spirit settles, when something inside you exhales, when you recognize that despite the uncertainty, you're exactly where you need to be. That doesn't mean doubts won't creep in. That doesn't mean you won't have moments where fear tries to take over. But peace, the kind of peace that surpasses understanding, will keep you from spiraling. It will remind you to trust, to keep going, to take the next step, even when perfection is out of reach. So if you're looking for a sign that God is leading you, start here. Not with the absence of difficulty, not with the illusion of perfection, but with the presence of peace. If you can wake up in the morning, look at the mess, the unknowns, the unanswered questions, and still say, something in me knows I'm on the right path. That's your confirmation. That's how you know. Because when God leads, He doesn't just make things perfect, He makes them possible. And that is more than enough. One of the clearest signs that God is leading you on the right path is when doors open. Doors you never knocked on. Doors you never even considered. You might have a plan, a roadmap, a checklist of exactly how you think your life should unfold, but then out of nowhere, an opportunity presents itself. A conversation leads to a breakthrough. A stranger turns into a mentor. A job offer lands in your lap without you even applying. These moments aren't random. They're divine. They're orchestrations far beyond what we could arrange on our own. When things align in ways that feel almost too perfect, pay attention. That's not luck. That's God saying, this way. Walk this way. Now, let's be honest, sometimes these open doors don't look the way we expect them to. We think they'll be grand, obvious, neon signs pointing us in the right direction, but more often than not, they appear quietly, subtly. Sometimes they look like detours. Sometimes they look like disruptions. A job loss that forces you into a career that actually aligns with your gifts. A rejection that pushes you into the opportunity you were meant for all along. It's easy to see an open door when it's something we want. But what about when an open door doesn't look like a blessing at first? Sometimes God's leading doesn't come in the form of a perfect offer. It comes in the form of a closed chapter that forces us to move. We have to be willing to recognize that not every door we knock on will open, and that's a good thing. We get frustrated when things don't go according to plan, when the door we were so sure about stays locked. But what if that closed door was actually protection? What if God kept it shut because there was a better one waiting? We don't always have the full picture. We see the moment. God sees the entire story. The key is trusting that when the right door opens, it will be in alignment, not just with what we want, but with what we need. Another thing about these unexpected open doors, they often come with an element of discomfort. That's right. Just because a door is meant for you doesn't mean it won't require courage to walk through it. Sometimes the opportunities God places in front of us feel too big. They challenge us. They stretch us. They call us into a version of ourselves we haven't fully stepped into yet. And that can be terrifying. But don't mistake fear for a sign that you shouldn't move forward. If God opens the door, He will also equip you to walk through it. And let's talk about divine timing. So often we try to force doors open before they're ready. We push, we hustle, we try to manipulate outcomes, thinking if we can just work hard enough, everything will fall into place. But here's what's true. The doors that are meant for you will open at exactly the right time. Not a moment too early, not a moment too late. You won't have to shove them open. You won't have to beg them to stay open. When God opens a door, it stays open until you walk through it. And if you miss it, if you hesitate and wonder if you lost your chance, don't worry. What's truly meant for you won't pass you by. This is why faith matters so much, because the truth is you won't always see the door opening in real time. Sometimes you'll only recognize it in hindsight. You'll look back and realize that a single yes, a single step, a single moment of obedience led to something you never could have orchestrated on your own. That's why we have to trust the process. That's why we have to be open, not just to the doors we think we want, but to the doors God knows we need. So, when opportunities start presenting themselves, especially the ones you didn't see coming, pay attention. Don't dismiss them just because they weren't part of your original plan. Maybe that unexpected job offer, maybe that last-minute trip, maybe that chance encounter with a stranger who speaks directly into your situation. Maybe that's the door. And maybe, just maybe, it's been waiting for you all along. One of the biggest misconceptions we have about following the right path, the one God is leading us on, is that it should feel effortless. That if we're truly where we're meant to be, things should fall into place without struggle. But that's not how purpose works. That's not how faith works. In fact, one of the biggest signs that you're walking in alignment with God's plan is the presence of resistance. Yes, you heard me right. If you're stepping into something meaningful, expect opposition, expect obstacles, expect fear, doubt, and challenges to show up, often right at the moment you decide to take that next step. Resistance isn't a sign that you're on the wrong path. It's often the greatest confirmation that you're exactly where you need to be. Think about it. If you are doing something meaningless, if you are walking away from your calling instead of toward it, fear wouldn't even bother to show up. Resistance doesn't chase after complacency. It doesn't attack mediocrity. It fights against purpose. It rises up when you're on the brink of something important. The moment you decide to step out in faith, to pursue something bigger than yourself, to take the risk, to embrace change, that's when fear gets the loudest. Why? Because fear's job is to keep you small, to keep you from stepping into the fullness of what God has for you. And resistance doesn't just come in the form of internal fear. It can show up in your circumstances too. Suddenly things get harder. Maybe doors that were open before start to close. Maybe the people around you don't understand your decision. Maybe unexpected challenges arise. and you start second guessing everything. It's easy to look at these struggles and think, maybe this means I'm not supposed to do this. Maybe this means I should turn back. But that's exactly what the enemy wants you to believe. Resistance is not a stop sign. It's a test of your faith, of your resilience, of your willingness to keep going even when the path gets hard. Look at the stories of the greatest leaders, visionaries, and change makers in history, biblical and otherwise. Did any of them step into their calling without resistance? Moses doubted himself at every turn. David had to face Goliath. Esther risked her life to fulfill her purpose. Even Jesus himself encountered opposition at every stage of his mission. If resistance showed up for them, why would we expect our path to be any different? The presence of struggle doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. It means you're walking in the footsteps of every person who has ever stepped into something greater than themselves. And let's talk about internal resistance for a second, because sometimes the biggest battle isn't the external obstacles. It's the war that happens inside of us. The voice that whispers, "Who do you think you are?" The self-doubt that convinces us we're not qualified. The fear of failure that makes us want to quit before we even start. But here's the truth. Fear doesn't show up to stop you from failing. It shows up to stop you from succeeding. If resistance is rising up, it's because there's something on the other side of it, something worth fighting for. So what do we do when resistance shows up? We expect it. We stop being surprised by it. We stop seeing it as a sign that we should turn back and start seeing it as confirmation that we're moving in the right direction. We push through it, not because it's easy, but because we know what's on the other side is worth it. Every great thing you will ever do, every dream, every calling, every step of faith will come with resistance. And when it does, you get to decide, will you let it stop you or will you let it strengthen you? Because here's what's true. On the other side of resistance is breakthrough. On the other side of doubt is clarity. On the other side of fear is freedom. God never promised an easy path, but he did promise that he would walk it with you. So when resistance meets you at the door, don't shrink back. Stand firm, take the next step, and trust that if you keep going, you'll see why it was all worth it. One of the most undeniable signs that God is leading you on the right path is that your journey starts to feel bigger than you. You begin to realize that your purpose isn't just about personal success, comfort, or achievement. It's about something deeper, something that will impact others. When God is calling you, he's not just calling you for you. He's calling you because someone else needs what you have. Your story, your experiences, your gifts, they aren't just for your benefit. They are meant to serve, to inspire, to lift, and to help others find their way too. A divine calling always extends beyond the person being called. And let's be real, sometimes that can feel overwhelming. We like the idea of purpose when it's neat and manageable, when it fits into our plans. But when we realize that our calling will require more from us than we expected, it's tempting to shrink back. It's tempting to say, surely God doesn't mean me. Surely someone else is more qualified, more capable, more prepared. But if you look at history, biblical and beyond, God has a habit of calling the people who feel the least prepared. Moses didn't think he could lead. Esther didn't think she had the power to make a difference. Jonah literally ran in the opposite direction. But here's the thing, God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. If your purpose feels bigger than you, that's because it is. And that's a good thing. If it were something you could handle entirely on your own, it wouldn't require faith. It wouldn't require you to trust in something beyond yourself. But when you're called to something that feels out of reach, something that stretches you, something that makes you question whether you're ready, that's when you know it's a God-sized calling. Because when God calls you, He doesn't just give you a vision, He gives you everything you need to fulfill it. And here's what's incredible. When you start walking in your purpose, you begin to see how it connects with others. You start to notice that your obedience, your courage, your willingness to step into the unknown affects people. Maybe you say yes to an opportunity, and suddenly it opens the door for someone else. Maybe you share your story and it gives someone else the strength to keep going. Maybe your faith inspires faith in someone else. When you follow God's lead, the impact ripples outward in ways you never could have predicted. The right path isn't just about where you're going, it's about who you're helping along the way. But let's talk about the weight of that, because let's be honest, it's not always easy. When you realize that your calling is bigger than you, it can feel heavy. It can feel like too much responsibility, too much pressure. And if you're not careful, you might start believing that it all depends on you, but it doesn't. Your job isn't to have all the answers. Your job is to be obedient. God is the one who carries the weight of the mission. You are simply called to walk it out. You're not meant to do this alone. And you're not expected to have everything figured out. Your role is to trust, to show up, and to take the next step. And don't be surprised if this calling starts pulling you into unfamiliar territory. Growth happens outside of comfort zones. God will often lead you into places you never expected, into conversations you never thought you'd have, into opportunities that don't match the picture you had in your mind. But that's because His vision is bigger than ours. He sees the full picture. He knows the people who will be impacted by your yes. He knows how every moment of your journey is shaping you into the person you need to be. When you start feeling stretched, when the road ahead feels uncertain, remind yourself, I'm not just walking for myself. I'm walking for everyone my purpose is meant to reach. So if you find yourself wondering whether you're on the right path, ask yourself this: does this feel bigger than me? Does this require me to step outside of myself? Does this feel like something that could impact more than just my own life? If the answer is yes, that's not something to fear. That's something to embrace. Because when God is leading you, He's not just leading you to something for you. He's leading you to something through you. And that's when you know it's real. One of the clearest signs that God is leading you on the right path is that you start feeling uncomfortable. Not the kind of discomfort that signals danger or tells you to run away, but the kind that stretches you. The kind that nudges you beyond your comfort zone and into something greater. It's that holy tension between where you've been and where you're going. And let's be honest, it's unsettling because we love certainty, we love control, we love the familiar. But when God is calling you into something new, He doesn't just ask you to step forward. He asks you to step out of old habits, out of fear, out of the version of yourself that's been playing it safe. And that's where the tension comes in, because growth and comfort don't coexist. You can't hold on to what's familiar and step into what's possible at the same time. There will be moments where you feel completely out of your depth, where you feel like you're being stretched beyond what you thought you were capable of, where you're questioning, why does this feel so hard? But here's what's true. Discomfort isn't a sign that you're on the wrong path. It's proof that you're growing. It means you're moving beyond what's easy and into what's necessary. Think about every major transformation in your life. Every time you evolved, stepped into something new, became a better version of yourself. Did any of those moments come without discomfort? Of course not, because nothing meaningful ever happens inside your comfort zone. God doesn't call us to stay the same. He calls us to become more, to step into our full potential, to trust Him with what we can't yet see. And that requires stretching. It requires faith. It requires learning how to exist in the space between what was and what will be without panicking. The problem is, we're wired to avoid discomfort. Our instinct is to retreat the moment things feel uncertain. But what if we started to see discomfort as a sign of alignment? What if, instead of running from it, we leaned in and asked, God, what are you trying to show me here? Because the truth is, discomfort is a classroom. It teaches us patience. It teaches us trust. It teaches us how to rely on God instead of our own plans. When we resist the urge to escape, we gain the ability to transform. And let's talk about another side of discomfort, the part that comes when you start changing, but the people around you don't. Growth can be lonely. When you step into something new, not everyone will understand it. Some people will try to pull you back into the version of yourself that made them comfortable. Others might not support your journey because it forces them to confront their own fears. And that's hard. But don't let that discomfort convince you to shrink. If God is calling you higher, trust that He's preparing the right people to walk alongside you. Discomfort is often a sign that you're outgrowing something, and that's a good thing. Another reason this discomfort is actually a gift, it forces you to depend on God in ways you never have before. When everything is predictable, when you're in control, it's easy to rely on yourself. But when you're walking into unknown territory, when you have no choice but to trust that the next step will appear, that's when faith becomes real. That's when you learn to surrender, to listen, to lean on Him instead of your own understanding. If you're feeling uncomfortable right now, take a deep breath and remind yourself, this isn't punishment, this is preparation. So if you're wondering whether you're on the right path, don't just look for comfort, look for stretching. Look for moments where you feel unqualified but called anyway. Look for the spaces where you're growing in ways that scare you, because if you're feeling uncomfortable, if you're feeling stretched, if you're standing at the edge of what's familiar and being asked to step forward anyway, that's not a sign to stop. That's a sign that God is leading you exactly where you need to go. When God is leading you on the right path, you start noticing signs, small, powerful nudges that confirm you're exactly where you need to be. And let's be clear, these signs don't always look the way we expect them to. We want the sky to open up, a voice to boom down. This is the way. But most of the time, divine confirmation comes in whispers. A conversation that speaks directly to your situation, a verse that keeps showing up, a door that opens at just the right time. These aren't coincidences. They're reminders that you're being guided even when you don't fully understand where you're going. And sometimes the signs are so specific that they stop you in your tracks. You're debating a big decision and then, boom, someone says exactly what you needed to hear. You're praying for direction and suddenly a message pops up that feels like it was written just for you. It's almost eerie how precise it is, like God is saying, I see you, I hear you, keep going. The world might call it luck or serendipity, but when it keeps happening, you know better. These moments aren't random. They're divine reminders that you are walking in alignment with something bigger than yourself. But let's talk about what happens when you start second-guessing these signs. Because let's be honest, sometimes we want more confirmation. We keep asking, God, are you sure? Even though He's already shown us 10 different ways. We hesitate, we doubt, we overanalyze. And that's normal, it's human. But at some point, faith requires trust. If you've been seeing sign after sign, if you've been feeling nudged in the same direction over and over, at what point do you stop questioning and start moving? God isn't going to keep confirming something you're refusing to step into. Sometimes the sign you're waiting for is in the obedience you haven't taken yet. And here's something important. God doesn't just confirm His direction through external signs. Sometimes the biggest confirmation is internal. You feel peace. Not the kind of peace that means everything is easy and perfect, but the deep, unshakable kind that settles in your spirit. Even if the path ahead is uncertain, even if the journey feels hard, something inside you knows this is right. That's God's way of whispering, trust me, because peace isn't found in certainty, it's found in surrender. Another powerful way God confirms his direction, through repetition. If you keep hearing the same message, seeing the same verse, feeling the same pull in your spirit, pay attention. God knows we need reminders. He knows we struggle with doubt. That's why he repeats things, not because he's unsure, but because we are. If something keeps coming up, don't ignore it. Lean into it. Ask yourself, what is God trying to tell me here? Because if he keeps bringing something to your attention, it's for a reason. And let's be real. Sometimes we don't get the confirmation we want, but we get the confirmation we need. We expect flashing lights and unmistakable clarity, but instead, we get a quiet assurance, a deep knowing, a sense that even though we don't have all the answers, we're on the right track. And that's enough. Because faith isn't about having every detail figured out. It's about trusting the one who does. The signs, the confirmations, they're not just about proving you're on the right path. They're about reminding you who is leading you. So if you've been seeing signs, if you've been feeling nudges, if things keep aligning in ways you can't explain, don't brush it off. That's not random. That's not coincidence. That's confirmation. God isn't subtle when he wants to get your attention. The question is, are you listening? At the end of the day, following God's path isn't about having all the answers. It's about trusting the one who does. It's about stepping forward, even when you're uncertain. It's about believing that every challenge, every moment of discomfort, every door that opens or closes is shaping you for something greater. If you've been feeling resistance, if your calling feels bigger than you, if you're uncomfortable but growing, if signs and confirmations keep showing up, trust that you are exactly where you're supposed to be. God doesn't promise an easy journey, but he promises his presence on the journey. And that's what truly matters. The path he's leading you on isn't just about reaching a destination. It's about who you are becoming along the way. Every challenge strengthens your faith. Every step stretches your trust. Every moment of uncertainty is an invitation to lean in closer to him. So take the step, walk in faith. Keep going, even when you don't have all the answers. The right path won't always be easy, but it will always be worth it. And one day you'll look back and realize that every twist, every challenge, every moment of doubt was leading you somewhere beautiful, exactly where you were meant to be.